Hey, everybody, and welcome once again to Fire Engineering's Humpday Hangout, to our show, the issues and challenges of today's fire service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with my co-host, Chief Terry McGrath, Assistant Chief Terry McGrath from Louisville. Terry's run a little bit late. They're doing their promotional process and interviews today, so he'll be jumping on with us in a little bit. But Terry and I've got another great one for you today. As always, if you have any questions, jump on Twitter and shoot them out to us. Our way, we'll either Sarah, our producer, or we'll try and jump on them and get them. I know a lot of you sometimes don't want to interrupt, but please feel free.
I know, but she's all right.
And make sure that you add hashtag FE Talk for Fire Engineering Talk, so we get it. And looks like we got the boss and family joining us today. Chief,
hey, I'm here with Jason Wheatley.
Hey, Jason, how are you, Jason? That is awesome. How you doing, Jason?
It's that one. I'm sorry. We're working on lighting. We got our lighting man working. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. We've got
hey, it's the Paul Combs.
The Paul Combs.
Well, Bobby, I was just doing the intro. Terry's running a little bit late. They're doing promotional interviews right now, so he'll be jumping on with us. So folks, for our listeners today, our viewers, Terry and I and Bobby are hanging out with a true fire service brother. I don't know how else to say it other than that. He's a mentor. He's a great instructor, and his artwork has impacted the lives of those in fire and EMS, and with our troops through his work with the USO, both in the States and overseas. Paul is I actually tweaked his bio a little bit because he's a very modest guy, if you know Paul. But Paul Combs is a classically trained artist, illustrator, and firefighter EMT.
What was that last name again? Paul what?
Paul Combs. His lavishly detailed artwork is published worldwide in magazines, books, and numerous corporate safety posters and training material. He is the editorial cartoonist that you all know for Fire Engineering Magazine, Fire Rescue Magazine, and GEMS. Paul is the author of 3 incredible books, count them 3, Drawn by Fire 2, and that's TOO, and Drawing Lines, The Art of Making a Difference. Paul is a 23-year veteran of the fire service, and he is currently a lieutenant with the City of Bryan Fire Department in Ohio. Paul is an FDIC presenter for Chief Halton and the hands-on training and a hands-on training instructor. I'll ask him about that in a little bit. He's an adjunct instructor for the State of Ohio Fire Academy and instructor with On-Scene Training Associates, and he lectures internationally. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, buddy.
Thank you.
So, and Bobby, before we go any further, let's introduce one of our other guests.
This is Jason Wheatley.
And Jason's wearing a blanket that'll make a lot of Cub fans happy.
And Jason is the oldest known living patient with Duchenne's disease.
Well, I don't know if I'm the oldest, but
definitely the ugliest.
That's that right.
One of the oldest. It's a neuromuscular disease, and much like it's part of the MS classification.
Well, no, muscular dystrophy.
But part of that.
Yeah, MS and muscular dystrophy.
Muscular dystrophy.
Kind of different.
Okay.
MS is more neurological.
Okay.
Whereas Duchenne muscular dystrophy is not. It's progressive weakening of the muscles due to a lack of a protein called dystrophin.
Okay. All right. So that's who we're here with today, and Jason and I get a chance to visit every year just before FDIC, and he always gets me lined up. He gets me on target, tells me what to do and what to say.
That's right.
And so this is my boss, and this is who this is who we work for. So
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah,
Pretty awesome.
Incredibly elegant fellow, and I'm sure he'll add a bunch to the conversation.
I don't give you too much credit. Not yet.
Yeah. So the instructor of the year.
And I was just going to say that, not only, well, first of all, Jason's got, I mentioned this before we lost you for a second, Bobby, but he's going to make a lot of Cubs fans happy with his blanket. So,
Right.
But in my house, I got to wear the White Sox one, but I'm a Chicago fan at heart. So it was a great World Series, but yeah, hey, so anyway, we are with all our special guest is Paul Combs. And Paul, congratulations. Bobby mentioned it already on being selected as ISFSI's Instructor of the Year, dude, that is just awesome. Absolutely
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah, that's an incredible, humbling honor. It really is. I know I was actually vacationing in San Antonio when I got the call from Bobby, and my wife has a great photograph of me looking at her like, he's talking to me over here, you know, and I'm trying to mouth what just happened. And
oh, it's great.
No, it really is quite an honor, because I mean, I approach each one of my cartoons like an instructor. I have that instructor mentality when I'm creating my work. So to be honored like this and to be recognized as an instructor, it truly is humbling.
Well, and I think to quote Bobby, you know, making a phone call saying, God, what as soon as it's out, what a great selection for Instructor of the Year. And I think Bobby's reply was, well, duh. You know, well, duh. You know, I mean, come on, really? I mean, you know, Paul, first of all, you know, and Bobby, I wanted to mention, I told Paul this earlier before we went live, before we get into his work with, you know, there's so much of the work that he does for all the magazines with you and for the USO and so on and so forth. But he also teaches, besides his classroom stuff for you at FDIC, he teaches in the RIT Combat hot sessions. I want to, Paul, how did you get involved with that group?
You know, I'd known Chief Jim Crawford, for a couple of years there. And I do a lot of teaching with RIT, both in our area and I was with the state. And it just felt like a natural fit. And I mean, Bobby brings me out to FDIC and I'm there for the entire week. And it just seemed, I won't say I was bored, but not having really any role to play Monday and Tuesday, that was just kind of, it was really starting to eat at me a little bit, because I was just kind of wandering around aimlessly. And I knew that I had some skills that I could actually give if I just had the opportunity. So I got with Chief Halton, got with Chief Crawford, and we worked out to where I could be a volunteer instructor with them. This will be my 4th year teaching with the RIT Combat guys. And it truly is another humbling experience to be with those guys, because they are by far some of the smartest people I've ever been around in my life. You know, I'm very quiet around them, just for the fact that I don't think that I really want to speak with all that knowledge around me. But you know, they've been great. They've accepted me into their group, and I couldn't be more proud to be part of that RIT Combat group. It's a great class. I know whether you're one of the paid instructors or you're volunteer instructors, it doesn't matter with that group. Everyone's treated equally, and everyone's expected to work their butt off for the students, and we do.
Well, it fills up.
The reason that the students come out of that class and they've said it's one of the best classes they've ever taken, because we do truly give them a fabulous experience. And there's almost 300 years of combined experience with the instructors. And we really do pour all that out to the students when they're there for us.
And Bobby, they lock it up for you, don't they? Pretty much every year with attendance. And I know in the past, it's always one of those that seems to fill up really quick.
Yeah, it's a really popular class. That, you know, the troops love it, because it's a, you know, it's a hard-hitting, no-nonsense class. If you take that class, RIT Combat, you are going to be working from the minute you get off the bus till the minute you get back on the bus. And it's not unusual to see, you know, those guys and gals, you know, get off just dripping in sweat, but you couldn't knock the smiles off their faces with crowbars. You know, the sign of good training is it's hard work and it's too much fun, right? Yeah. So,
you know, we work them hard, but they work us just as hard. We love it.
Well, and Paul, I want to spring something on you here that I didn't mention earlier, but you mentioned a lot of great instructors, a lot of years of experience, you know, and I mean, if I could ask you to kind of talk very briefly, if you want, or for however long you want, about your friend EJ, and there's some people that are going to be missed tremendously. Sadly, we've had for FDIC, I mean, golly, there's so many folks that teach, you know, for Chief Halton and his team, his group, and I've always been honored. But over the years, it's like, golly, it's you know, you can't help but get even closer to people. And then all of a sudden something happens and we lose another one. But it's another guy, if you want to talk about that was what an incredible, his legacy will live on.
I'm not sure I could do this in an hour. You know, my first, from the first day that I was with the RIT Combat troop, I was in the van. And again, I'm not a big talker, you know, so I'm in the van and EJ jumps in the van. And it's the first time we've ever met. We're heading out to our site to get things set up. that Saturday morning. And we honestly did not like each other at the beginning. He jumped in, and to know EJ knows that he's got something to say about everything. And it was just nonstop talk. And I'm like, who's this guy that will not shut up? You know, and he's looking at me going, okay, yeah, Bobby kind of put his prima donna in here and he thinks he's better than anybody. Look at him, we're not talking, you know. And that was the relationship he and I had for our first impression. But, you know, over those 2 days of working and getting the hot site put together, he and I, with Pete Copeland, teach the Pittsburgh drill together. So we were together the entire time. And by probably Monday morning or Tuesday, we were best of friends. And that relationship just continued to grow over the years to the point to where, now I'm going to try to get through this. It got to the point to where EJ would comment on every cartoon that I did, whether he liked it or he didn't, because again, EJ had an opinion about everything. Whether he liked it or not, he would always comment. He was either calling me or texting me about the cartoon. And we'd either have a laugh about it, or we would discuss it, debate it, argue. But it was always something about everything that I posted. So I knew the minute it went live, within an hour or so, I was going to get something. And when that went silent after his death, I was probably as close as ever of just hanging up all of this. I created a couple of cartoons afterwards, but I guess the pain of not getting that message from EJ was just too much. And it was to the point to where I had the phone in my hand one day to call Bobby and say, I'm done. I can't create any more of these. I'm retiring it, and I'm just done. And it got to the point to where, and I know I've done quite a few cartoons on mental health, but you know, I've always had the Superman cape on and never needed it myself, or at least never thought I did, until the nightmares started to come and EJ was involved. And it got to a point to where my wife and I were sitting in a coffee shop, and if I'm having a bad night, I get out of bed and I go downstairs and get on the couch because I don't want to wake her up. Well, she could hear me downstairs. And so she brought it up during coffee at the coffee shop that morning. And so I told her about the dreams I was having. And she called me out as a hypocrite. She's like, you do all these cartoons, you preach getting mental health, you know, you preach getting help when you need it, but you won't do it. And that was kind of my cold water in the face to call and get help. And I did. There's the wonderful therapist out of Chicago that I've known for years. We've worked some together, Sarah Gura. And I called her, and within an hour, obviously she had me crying like a baby, but she basically made me admit the things I already knew. And just kind of hand walked me through the process a little bit of being able to not recover as much as to accept that he was gone and he wasn't coming back, and that I wasn't going to get those texts and emails and phone calls, and that was okay, just to remember the ones I did. And that was a hard couple of months. I know a lot of us had some very hard months after EJ left us. Some still struggle with it. I still do, but at least I've been able to turn it to positive memories at this point.
Like I said, the legacy, buddy, I know I sprung that on you. I had it.
No, it's good. I'm just glad I got through this without crying.
And I want to throw this, you know, Paul, to Bobby for a second, because Bobby, I told you this before. I don't think there's a class I teach that I don't mention that I'm very fortunate to work for a boss at fire engineering. I mean, you know, fire engineering FDIC, you know, the whole
right, yeah.
That doesn't embrace Paul. Bobby is an advocate and always has been. He was an advocate for mental health awareness before it was popular. I don't want to say it like that, but
a buzzword.
There's firefighters out there with PowerPoint presentations teaching stuff on suicide, mental health, don't have a clue. We have doctors that can't figure it out. But Bobby has always been an advocate, and I'm honored that he is. My son went through some stuff. I've been through some stuff. I know Bobby and I both have had some personal issues with family and that. And so we're fortunate. But Bobby, let me, if I still got you, I don't know if we lost Bobby for a second.
Yeah, it looks like he went off.
Yeah, well, when we get Bobby back, and I want to ask him a question. But that's the nice thing, you know, Paul, about teaching at FDIC, if you will, is you're exposed to more than just what's in your firehouse.
Right.
You know, and just while we're talking about this, one of my absolute idols is Butch Cobb. Butch Cobb retired as a chief, as one of the big assistant chiefs in Jersey City. Unbelievably decorated Vietnam vet that you would never know it. Just incredible man. And we were at John Salka's son, James, Captain of Marines, his wedding, and Butch was taught. We were all sitting together. It was Butch, me, and Jay Jonas, and Mickey Conboy, and Chris DeLizio, and we're sitting there. And Butch said, after he was standing, a lot of people remember standing where the globe is. He had responded mutual aid on 9/11 with a dispatcher that ended up subsequently getting killed on 9/11, and the one building came down, and long story short, it brought back a lot of horrible things from Vietnam, and he sought out some counseling, and he said, I can't tell you how many people came out to me and said, if it's okay for Butch, one of the toughest people I know, to go, then it must be okay for me to go. And that's why with people like you, Paul, an icon of the fire service, and then Chief Halton to embrace it like he does,
right,
is just, and Bobby, now that we got you back, what I want to ask you was, or your comments on, Paul talked about EJ, but just at FDIC, the relationships, besides all the great classes and everything that goes on there during the day and in the evening, the learning process, like 24 hours a day, 35,000 firefighters, the relationships though, Bobby, the relationships that are made there, are incredible. That you're exposed to people, like Paul just said with EJ, that you never would have met in your lifetime probably if you didn't go to FDIC, and you see this firsthand, the relationships that are made at FDIC.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the coolest things about FDIC is that it's a place that has no agenda. It has no what do you want to call it, like theme or anything like that. We just all go there and hang out and be ourselves. And it's a chance for people like us that are, I guess, compulsive. Like there are folks that like the fire service, and then there are folks that go to FDIC. It's like if you go to your closet and your entire wardrobe are navy blue T-shirts and blue jeans, you might be an FDIC loyalist. If a fire engine goes down the road and you're on your way to church, but you have to turn around just because you think it might have been an HME and you're not sure if it was a Pierce or an HME, you might be an FDIC loyalist. If your home is adorned with cartoons from Paul Combs that you may have legally or illegally obtained by downloading them from the internet, you might be an FDIC loyalist.
I have an attorney on speed dial for those folks.
Damn it! You're caught again, Jason. Darn it!
I'm not.
Oh man, and I keep trying to convince people that I drew them, but I'll tell you, it's the biggest cool thing about FDIC is getting to hang out with my buddies like Jason once a year, getting to see a lot of the guys and gals who that can get there and that do get there just because we just want to give each other a hug and
a hard time.
And a hard time, right? A hug and a hard time. Dan DeGrice, who's our keynote this year, who's probably the best guy in the country when you're talking about, and I've got Big Scotty with me too, guys. I know he's off camera because we're trying to keep Jason in here, but
it's all right.
I've got Big Scotty over here too. Danny's probably the best guy in the world. He's keynoting on Wednesday, and he's been doing this for 30 plus years, dealing with mental health and dealing with all of those issues. And when you lose somebody like Paul did, that he was as close to as EJ, a lot of stuff happens in your head that you're not ready for, and that and it's okay to talk to folks about it. It's okay to say, hey, this is really bugging me, and getting past it. That's a healthy thing to do, right? So yeah, and Danny's going to keynote, and he's going to be there, and FDIC has a lot of that therapy, right? I mean, it's like the cheapest therapy you can possibly get, because right, like every hallway has at least 2 or 3 fire service psychologists willing to help you out, or at least they play psychologists in the firehouse.
It's the biggest family reunion in the country.
Absolutely.
And Bobby, I told you last year, we need to get a hold of Monster, the drink people, and have them come up with a Monster drink called FDIC, because it's like the greatest adrenaline rush, that you could get if you're, I've said it for years. If you're in a funk, in the fire service, if so, whatever, you got passed over a promotion or just whatever, just show up. You show up there. If you can leave there with any kind of a down or negative attitude, then there's something wrong. It's the greatest energy jolt that you get is and like we said, the relationships and everything are incredible, absolutely incredible.
And you know what's so funny is that we were talking about it on the way over. There's a modern construct going on to where everybody's afraid to say what they really think because they're afraid somebody's going to get mad at them, right? Or it's not going to fit in, right? You don't have to worry about that at FDIC. No. It's hard to be more inappropriate than John Salka. I mean, honestly. I mean, seriously. I mean, it's hard to be, really goofier than I am. I mean, it's just tough, and that's just kind of neat.
Would it be an accurate statement to say that FDIC rank doesn't matter?
Oh no, rank definitely matters. I outrank everybody. That would not be accurate.
It's okay.
And what that means is that I work for every single person that goes to that show.
Yeah.
Every single one. I don't care. I don't care if they're the people that we have there for security or the great folks that keep it so clean. I work for them, and Ricky works for them, and everybody on the advisory board team works for them.
It's a true servant's heart.
Right. We're all there. We're all there so that everybody there is working for everybody else to make their experience the best possible experience it can be. And a lot of that involves having those tough conversations, right? Like, hey, Buttercup, you know what I mean? Maybe you need to go talk to somebody. And on that note, Mike Healy is going to have the Friends of Bill meeting. So if you're in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and you're worried about missing your meetings, we have meetings right at AA. Honest to God, and Mike is hooked up with a bunch of licensed clinical therapists who will be there. Dan knows who they are. We have folks like that. So if there is something, if you want to go somewhere, okay, so this is how I relate to this. This is stupid. So this is a Haltonism. I'm a Catholic. So we have this thing called confession that we can do every Saturday to get our slate clean for the upcoming week or month or whatever, right? So I never go to confession at my own church because you don't want to tell your own priest all the goofy stuff you think and do, right? So you go to some other, like if I see a priest in the airport, I'll go, hey, are you a Catholic priest? And they'll say, yeah. I say, hey, you got a second? And about 4 hours later, the poor guy's like, his ears are bleeding. He goes, how long have you been doing all these things? Well, I went to confession last week. No, I'm just kidding. But so FDIC is kind of like that, right? And speaking of that, we lost EJ, we lost Maddie last year. This year we lost Alan, we lost Mr. B. Father John, who will hate me for even saying this on air, is battling cancer right now. He's going through, I think he's on his 30th radiation treatment. So he won't be with us this year. But if there was ever a guy, right, he's a Catholic priest who last year gave the entire audience the finger at the main program presentation. Remember that?
I think you're seeing that.
That was.
I watch online.
That was
my kind of priest.
You talk about he is the absolute perfect priest for FDIC.
I like the ones that are self-deprecating.
Right. So you think we couldn't top that, right? So this is a true story. Paul, you'll love this. You got the priest we got this year. He's an Episcopalian priest, but he used to be a Catholic priest. He fell in love. I swear to God, you can't make this. This is right out of Chicago Fire or some comedy series. He fell in love with a Catholic nun. They both left the church, got married. Now he's an Episcopalian priest. They're happily married, and they're both coming. They're both coming. Father Jim, he's going to be doing the invocation. So, I mean, I love this show for just those reasons. We are like the goofiest people on the face of the planet, and we're dang proud of it. You know what I mean?
And it's a badge of honor. And Bobby, about the relationships of that, this is a chance where, and I think it's so much fun to see when Bobby's walking the hallways. I've said this for the longest time with Bobby that I've seen him run late to things because he stops to talk. Everybody, he's got time for everybody. Yeah. I mentioned Tom Brennan last year. Always had a minute for you. And you were and the minute you spent with him, you were better for it. The same thing with Bobby, and not to blow smoke, but as busy as he is and everything going on, he always has times for people. And Paul, I saw that with you when you and I got to sign some books in Lucas Oil Stadium. And
right.
First of all, I love watching people walk up and they get about 10 feet and they go, that's him, that's Paul Combs. And no, you go ask him. No, you go ask him. And
that couldn't be Paul Combs. Paul Combs is 7 foot tall and shoots fireballs out his arms.
but yeah, exactly. So Paul, I mean, let's talk about your artwork for a little bit. We talked about everything else you do training wise.
Right.
Your artwork.
Talk about this month's cover.
Well, and I had that picture. I was going to show it, but go. Bobby beat me to it. Let's talk about this month's cover to start with.
Okay. Well, every year Bobby and I get together and we try to find out some special way to do the cover for April. And whether it be that I illustrate something out, or I work with my daughter who's a professional photographer and I do some type of photo illustration from her work. We always try to do something special for this month. And Bobby got with me this month, or this year, and we started talking about that theme that we wanted to really get across. And we both knew that we wanted this gladiator, this very dark and brooding type of cover. And I think while he was actually describing what he was wanting, I actually drew this in my head. So I knew that's always a good sign between us, because I know that we're on the right track if I'm drawing it as he's talking. So yeah, I mean, I think that was the very first concept that I sent to him that was approved, and we rolled with it, other than just a couple little tweaks that we were on the same page with that. So I love the broodiness of it. I love the mood of it. I love the seriousness of that piece. I know with my cartoon work, I don't always get an opportunity to illustrate quite like that, kind of pulling in a little bit more of a comic book style.
Paul and I work together every year on the cover, and it's really hard. It's a hard thing to do because Paul's an artist, right? And I'm not. I'm an idiot. And so, he'll ask me, what's your theme? What are you talking about on Wednesday? What are you talking about on Thursday? And on Wednesday, I'm talking about obligation, the difference between covenants and contracts. And on Thursday, I'm talking about authoritarian high modernism and how it affects how people approach.
I got a dictionary around here somewhere. Sorry. Go ahead, buddy.
I just glaze over when he starts talking that way.
Paul is going to illustrate most of my talk, so don't get too nervous. So, so the cover, and Jason would like a signed copy. Is that okay, Paul?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the things I would tell everybody when you're at FDIC, if you've got a copy of the mag, and they'll be out there at the fire engineering booth, you can go get copies of it. Go up to Paul and get him to sign it, man.
Absolutely, love to.
Yeah, get Paulie to sign it, and then you can frame it and put it up in your in your pad. And
that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
because I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
I've got one hanging behind me. That's one of my photos. I got to have the cover once. I mean, very proud of that. And they're free.
Illustrations every month.
Can you hear Jason?
Yeah.
He's kind of broken up on my end.
Isn't this better?
A little.
I said I'm a big fan of your illustration, and I always look forward to them every month in both fire engineering and fire rescue.
Well, thank you.
And GEMS and fire engineering online.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And let's talk. Let's talk about that though, real, because a lot of people don't know, Bobby. Paul, you're we know how you got into this with let's talk about your artwork, how you got rolling with it, and then kind of walk us how Paul Combs started doing it. Was it doodling? Was it whatever? A lot of people have different ways how they get into their passions, and then how you come up with the topics. Because I've said before, the topics, you've heard me say, Paul, plenty of times that some of them are just hilarious, funny, and then some of them have a big, gigantic, pointed stick on it. And there's been times I've been leaving. I've told you this before. You're driving home and you go, God, or you call, you see that? Look at Paul Combs' latest one in fire engineering. Hey, wait a minute, that's me. He's talking about me, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I got to change some stuff. It just, But let's talk about that, because there's so much you do, and I want to definitely get to your USO stuff as well. But let's talk about the fire EMS stuff that you're doing. How you started doing this stuff, and then how do you come up with the topics?
Right. Well, I always talk about in my bio that I'm classically trained, and what I mean by that is I was actually trained to do type of museum type work, very detailed, very realistic drawings and paintings. And That was okay. Technically, it was fun to do, but there was never any soul to it. There's never heart in that type of artwork. So I actually started doing some political cartoons. That style, there was an ad agency that wanted me to do political cartoons against another ad agency as a joke. And just in the process of researching political cartooning, I fell in love with that style and decided that, you know what, I'm going to kind of give this a go. So I started drawing political cartoons. 6 months later, I'm the staff editorial cartoonist at the Tampa Tribune. But that was my year and a half to 2 years out of the fire service when we moved down to Tampa, and I hated being out of the fire service. I missed that part of my life. So I was always going to the websites, always reading, still doing that sort of thing. So I decided to do a fire service editorial cartoon. I think my first one was actually on the Fire Act. And it was in the news at the time. It was actually in national news at the time. And this was in 2005. And so I took it to my editor at the Tampa Trib and I asked her to run it. And her knowing my fire service background, she was happy to do so. It went in the magazine. And then that evening, I approached firehouse.com if they wanted to run it. And within a couple of hours that evening, I actually had a contract to start doing cartoons for Firehouse. And I think I did a happy dance around their apartment because in a lot of ways that meant I was back in the fire service. If nothing more than just doing cartoons. So, you know, I did cartoons for firehouse.com. I started doing them for the magazine. And in 2008, Bobby and I had been talking about it for a couple of years about me coming over to fire engineering. And by that time, we'd moved back to Northwest Ohio, and I grew up at FDIC. That was home for me, and so was fire engineering. So when I made the decision to leave Firehouse and come over to fire engineering, it was kind of like a homecoming for me. And I know Bobby and I talk about it quite a bit, but I don't know that if I'm the only contributor. Maybe I shouldn't say this on public record, but I think he and I are the only two that actually have a handshake agreement on this to be exclusive for fire engineering and Pinwell. And I'm very proud of that. I take loyalty very serious, and the fact that he and I have a handshake agreement on this, I treasure that.
Well, it's kind of like Jersey Boys. If you're watching the movie, right?
Yeah.
A handshake, a Jersey contract is a handshake. Well,
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Handshake with Bobby Halton is like a Jersey. It's like a Jersey contract.
You know, I'm an old school guy, and I put value in those handshakes. So it's something that he and I have honored all these years, going on 10 years now that I've been with the magazine.
Well, you do the calendars, you do the magazine, all the magazines, but the topics. I mean, because it's not just for our viewers. It's not just, well, Paul's coming up with an idea for fire engineering. He's coming up with an idea for fire rescue. He's coming up with an idea for GEMS, along with all the other stuff that you do.
Right.
Got to be. I mean, hell, you get writer's block. I don't know how it is as an artist, but I don't know, how do you keep coming up with the different topics? What generates that?
You know, I'm a student. You know, I'm always reading. I'm always watching video. I'm always and I guess maybe it's just the artist in me, but we're kind of like a sponge. We soak up the things around us. So just subtle phrases at the firehouse or anytime I'm out doing speeches, I actually soak those things in. And I don't know if you can see this on here, but this is my idea book. And I'm on my 4th volume of these books. Show
that again. Let's get it again.
I'm on my 4th volume of these books, and this is how I take notes, are these little thumbnail sketches. And all this is nothing but ideas on top of ideas of topics. So anything that comes across my head, I actually jot it down. Where normal people would actually make out a list of notes, I draw out my notes. So I have all this visual material to go through, and I'll actually go back through this every couple of months because, I mean, what was a great idea a couple of months ago may not be now, or vice versa. So, yeah, every cartoon I've created has started with a small thumbnail out of a book like this. And
you and I, we were in Canada together for our good friend Brad Bonus. He's the chief in Morinville Fire Department in Canada. And I'm doing my thing, and I'm looking out there, Paul, Bobby, and there's Paul. He's sitting there, and all of a sudden you can see like a flash, and then he's writing. I go, oh, there's gonna be another, and then I'm going, God, I better watch what I'm saying because.
Well, it freaks my guys out the firehouse too, because this thing goes everywhere with me. And creativity is kind of like a surf. You know, there's an ebb and flow to it. So I know days where the juices are flowing pretty hot, and I'll go up to the firehouse to work out, and I actually have this thing on the treadmill with me. And I'll be sitting there and I'll be walking, jogging, whatever, and I'll like jump off, and all of a sudden I'm drawing on the treadmill because just the light bulbs clicked in, and I've got to get that idea out. So
and that's got to happen, because I know anytime Bobby and I show up at a fire somewhere, just as casual observers, they're always like, "Oh, great, Lasky's here. You're not gonna write an article about us. Halt! You're not gonna put us in one of your magazines, are you?"
I get that all the time. Yeah.
Like we would never put anything bad there. It's got to be the same thing with you.
I get it all.
Bobby and Ricky. That's like, "Oh, there's Paul Combs. God, what we're gonna." Guys, everybody put your stuff on right, because, I mean.
Yeah, I get that quite a bit, but it's good. It's fun. And I like it because it means that folks are paying attention to what I'm doing.
Well,
and that's the end game here is I've got a message. I've got something that I feel is important to say. And, as an editorial cartoonist, I want my work to be a catalyst for conversation. I've always said that, there are people out there far smarter than me that need to figure this stuff out. My job is to get you talking about it. So that's, the fact that people make those kind of comments or they joke about it when I'm going places, I love that, because that means they're paying attention to what's being said and the message I'm trying to get out there. So it's a good thing. It's a compliment.
Well, and having a huge advocate like Chief Bobby Halt behind you with everything he does for the fire service and beyond. And
absolutely,
I have to say this, I wrote this down earlier. You and Bobby both know Jason, our other guest, Jason Wheatley, has never met my wife, but he would know her in a heartbeat and love her. Jamie is one of your, boy, oh boy, you want to get her pissed off in a hurry. Say something bad about one of Paul Combs. Or say,
oh my God, she has come to my defense so many times.
Oh, there's times I have to tell, babe, don't just, you know what? Paul's like my buddy, our good friend John Salka. John he says it. He goes, I'm getting ready to kick another hornet's nest to get people talking.
Yep.
Same thing. Bobby does it with his editorials to drive some, to get you to think about things that maybe you're not, or you should be thinking about, and give you more, pay more attention to. It's the same thing. Like I said before, a lot of your stuff is just funny, and a lot of it is just, let me ask you this. If you could pick, and this is going to be hard because you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of drawings. If you could pick like your top 3 to maybe 5, and we're not even talking USO stuff, we're talking fire and EMS stuff.
Right.
What do you think? I know, God, it's got to be hard for you, but I know I've got my favorite classes and stuff like that. But if you could pick a few, right, and why? What comes to thought?
Well, honestly, and I talk about this in my class, and it's the last cartoon that I share with folks. And I always say that it is my favorite of the 500 or so that I've drawn. And it's just 2 firefighters by a Maltese cross. And it's this symbol owes you nothing, but if you dedicate yourself to it, it'll give you everything. And that is by far my favorite because that one speaks to me. And, I'm living proof that cartoon is correct. There's nothing special about me. There are a lot of firefighters that can draw. But because I gave myself to that symbol, because that symbol owes me nothing, but I gave myself to that Maltese cross. I gave myself and my talent to the fire service. It has given me everything. It has allowed me to be at FDIC, to be in Fire Engineering Magazine, to be on a webcast like this. It has laid the groundwork because I use those tools and I use that passion and I gave it to that symbol. And then that's been the biggest difference. Like I said, there's really nothing special about me, but I married that passion and those tools and I gave that to the fire service. And, a lot of the cartoons that I draw for me. And I draw that as my reminder to do these things. A lot of the leadership as being a lieutenant, I do a lot of this work to remind me to do those things. And every time I look at that cartoon, that's my moment of Zen to say, okay, you need to refocus and remember why you're doing what you're doing. So of all the cartoons I've drawn, that one is by far my favorite. But to say a number 2 or a number 3, I don't know that I could just come up with something like that. I know I've got one where I've got a firefighter where his arm is actually a wing, and it's around another firefighter, and it's like, I will show you the way. I like that one, but there's so many. The mental health ones I do. And typically it's the ones and I know you and I talked about this. I kind of categorize my work in 3 different ways. I've got tickle treatment where there's really no point to it. There's just funny to be funny, something I recognize in everyday firefighter life or EMS life. And I just kind of put out there to be funny. And then there's the punches and jabs where they have a point, but I use some comedy. But it's the old baseball bat cartoons that I call them, the ones that are the gut punches that seem to resonate more with me, because those are the cartoons where I'm usually pissed, where I've got a lot of emotion tied up into it. And those resonate back to me probably a little bit harder than the silly ones I put out there.
Bobby,
those are the ones that I feel like I'm really making a difference, is the ones where, you know, there's no humor involved. And it's just that gut punch to wake someone up.
Like I said, that big, sharp, pointy stick, as I refer to it. But Bobby, you know, being the boss and all the letters to the editor that you get, I know you get some on Paul's work, but on impact. And I know people have told me that things that he's done for you have changed. And I'm just gonna say, not to sound dramatic, but they've said it has changed their life in one way or another. Some people, whether it's at home with the first family or with the second family with the firehouse. Bobby, with some of his work, which ones? I mean, it's kind of hard to put your finger on just one, but a couple that have had the greatest impact that you've seen from the bosses. I mean, you're running all these magazines, the conferences, everything else. You know, we talked about the one every year for FDIC, but what have you seen from your end? Like we always said, what is it, the view from 30,000 feet that you coined a long time ago before some other people did? Years ago. But Bobby, from your chair, you know, the ones you've seen that have maybe the most dramatic impact or that meant the most to you?
Well, a lot of times, and we'll get a note from a firefighter, and I'll always share them with Paul, and it'll usually start off like, I was working, you know, double shifts, I was focused, I was doing all this, and I saw Paul's art about the little girl or the little boy, and reminded them of the primary family, right? The fire service is our second family. And so often, and we're all concerned about making a living and taking care of the folks we love, and we forget that they want a little bit of our time, and they want our time more than they want money, more than they want a bigger house, more than they want a trip to Wally World. They want to see us, and so those are the ones that always break my heart, and I'll send them right to Paul, and Paul will call me up crying, and I'll have to talk him off the ledge again.
Don't cry. I don't cry. I don't cry.
And that's not true. That's not true. We both cried.
Even if you do, there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Oh, we've both cried many, many times together.
I'm a time bomb of tears.
Yeah. So, but so it's fascinating, and we just got. I think it was this morning, Paul. Was it this morning or last night? This morning or last night, I got a note from a fella who wanted the cover.
Oh, right. Yeah. Cover or the poster.
Right.
Yeah.
This just happened yesterday. And a young officer said, I saw the cover. It spoke to me. I've got to put it up in my firehouse. And we don't know, it's so fascinating because, and I hate Paul Combs, full disclosure. I can't stand him.
That's true.
No, it is true because he gets to say more with like, one of his character's eyes, just doing that little squinty thing that your mom did to you, that one eye up, one eye down thing that your mom would do to you. He'll do that, and like, I'll get 10,000 letters, it'll get 90,000 retweets, and and I'll write like an editorial that takes me a year and a half, and my mother will call me and say, "You misspelled Philistine." I'm like, seriously? That's all I get, right? So I hate him, but that's the beauty of what Paul does is Paul takes some of our most complex emotions, some of our deepest thoughts, some of our quietest moments, and he puts them into the corner of a mouth or the side of an eye or the face of a dragon or a dog, and you're like, I that's me. And you're not pointing to the character, you're pointing to the dog. You know what I mean? And it's all there, right? And it's that mix of wisdom and empathy with feeling and passion.
It just goes to show you how a picture, just a picture, can resonate and bring out emotions.
Yeah. And some of the stuff, but Paul's very humble, and he really is. He often tells me that humility is his greatest quality. And I'm just teasing him, but so he does other types of work, right? And I get to work with him when he does that. Like a lot of the covers that we've done over the year weren't the illustrations that everybody's so used to. They were photographs that he, did for me and did for us, and that he, took and bended and blended and does all kinds of stuff with. And to go even further, it's not just Paul, it's Paul's daughter, who's also a gifted artist. And Paul will bring his daughter into some of these projects. And I feel like Sling Bling, because he's shooting me these notes about, oh, my daughter's going to do the chromographic inversion on the double-plated, inside Fujbammer, and I'm like, oh yeah, great, that's what I would do. I have problems with my iPhone getting it to go to photograph, so which is just so, and what's amazing is that, and we see it today in our postmodernist society. I mean, there's thousands of people who can make simple things complicated. And they do it to give us the appearance of intelligence. They do it to make themselves look good. But true genius is making the complicated simple. And when Paul takes a complicated issue like decontamination and everything that goes with it, right? Whether it's cancer, whether it's health, whether it's taking care of your equipment, whether it's pride, and he puts all that together in an illustration that speaks one thing to Scotty, one thing to me, one thing to Jason, but to all of us collectively, we're coming to that same battlefield, right? But you're thinking artillery, I'm thinking infantry, you're thinking air support, but it's all right there, right? He's got the master stream idea. I'm going through the front door. You're worried about collapse, but in all of that, we're together on the main point, right? The main point is unassailable, but the nuance, that's what I've always been just blown away by, the nuance and the subtlety and it's and full disclosure, we do have and most of the folks who are listening, whether it's Traditions Training or even my bosses at Clarion Company, I don't do contracts. If my word and my handshake isn't good enough, then sorry, we can't work together. So, which I think is an ancient ancestral kind of way of doing business that I think is healthier. I always say, I can't remember who said it. Talib wrote about it the other day, but an old sage, an old Stoic used to say, enjoy old laws and fresh food. So an old law is your word. Your handshake is your bond, and it doesn't mean that you might not change your position, but you have to go to the people that you shook hands with and explain that, right? You've got to work that through, and that's okay, because shit happens, right? You can't see the future, and sometimes your positions change or your families do, but being able to celebrate Paul Combs with Instructor of the Year, and being able to be there for that is, for me, amazing. To have Billy Goldfeder getting Lifetime Achievement, to have Rusty Brown, very well deserved, to have Rusty Brown up there getting the Ray Downey Award for that amazing helicopter grab he did out in Cobb County. To be able to be a small part of helping the fire service celebrate, our living legends like Paul and Rusty and Billy, and having Harold Shakespeare take the time out of his incredible schedule to come and sit down with us on Wednesday night, and having Brock Long, the U.S. FEMA administrator, take time out of his hectic schedule to be with us on Wednesday morning. It truly is the greatest honor of my life to be allowed to, be a small part of this and hang out and be around people like Paul and like Ricky and Scott and you guys that are making seriously, this guy makes a huge difference. The other day he sent me a thing on some local cats who were in some kind of beef with the city council, right? Yeah, don't go into it. Yeah. Sorry, don't say the town.
That's all I'll say.
We're trying to avoid lawsuits here.
No,
So yeah.
I know. Believe me, I know.
So yeah, right. So but I mean, he's helping his guys out, right? Those are his guys, right?
Well, I mean, granted, I'm obviously physically disabled with a debilitating disease, but the fact that, back in the day when I was back home and I had some of my local guys there that me into, make me an honorary firefighter and all of that stuff, it meant the world to me. It still does. So obviously, when, somebody's messing with them, whether it's a private company, a city administration, or whatever the case may be, anybody that's treating them wrong, they're going to hear from me. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to be able to physically do anything, but I would like to think that my presence on social media and getting the word out is going to help them in some way. And I'm going to do that, whenever I have to.
Well, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think I have the permission of Chief Lasky and Captain Cohen to say that we'd appreciate it if you wouldn't use the word honorary. Because as far as FDIC is concerned, you're a firefighter. As far as fire engineering is concerned, you're a firefighter.
I appreciate
you're as much a firefighter as I am, and at this point in my life, and I'd be proud to call you my partner. Hell, I'd go into a fire with you any day.
I appreciate it.
On the back of my coin, what's a firefighter? Always a firefighter.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, it kind of goes back.
Besides, hey Ricky, look what he has. He's got a hot instructor's pin.
I don't even have one of those.
I don't have one.
Well,
Cole does one. I don't have one.
And for some folks that are out there, make sure you add hashtag FE Talk. I know some of you are hitting me. I got a couple of people that hit me up for questions like they always do. I'm like, we try to tell them so we can get it out there to do that. We'll get to those in a second. But if for some reason you just joined us, you're joining our show, the issues and challenges of the fire service that myself and Chief Terry McGrath and Chief Halton do the third Wednesday, would be a Humpday Hangout then, of the month. And Bobby's joined by our very good friend Jason Wheatley. And we've got Paul Combs, Lieutenant Paul Combs from the Bryan, Ohio Fire Department, City of Bryan, and he's the ISFSI Instructor of the Year, as Bobby mentioned. We're so very excited and so very well deserving. It's like Bobby said, that's a big duh. I mean, that makes all the sense in the world. But Paul, you said something earlier, and talk about you said there's something that really is going to this year at FDIC. Another thing that's going to make you feel just great and honored. You're going to be able to deliver a keynote for a particular group of people on Monday night.
Right. A couple months ago, Bobby got with me and asked if I would be interested in doing the keynote address for the Honeywell recipients of the scholarship awards this year on Monday night for their banquet. It was one of those things where, I mean, when he first asked, it was like, okay, another speech. Until I got off the phone with him and I had a chance to think about what that meant and what that represents. And, in so many ways, and I was actually on the phone with some folks in Honeywell this morning, just kind of nailing down the fine details here. And I'm so excited about this because you and I have had a chance to talk so many times about what my first full week of FDIC meant to me in my career in 2001. You did your keynote. And I've got so many stories from that first week. And it was because I was there with an open heart, an open mind, that first week at FDIC, and I've been to 15 since, changed my life and my career. And I can't wait to share that story with these recipients because it's going to be the first time they've had a chance to experience an entire week like this. I'm only hoping that they can kind of take my words and the experience that I have with FDIC and kind of run with it and kind of apply it to their week because, and I'm going to have another chance with them next Saturday morning to sign some books for them. So I'm going to have a chance to talk to them, at the beginning of the week and at the end of the week and kind of see what they went through.
And
what are you excited about that?
And what's it a good practice for?
What? Some keynote that I'm doing. I think some small little speech I'm giving next year. I think.
Yeah. What's the name of the show you're going to be giving that at again?
What is that again? FDIC something international.
That big banking show.
The Bankers Insurance.
The big insurance company show.
But how cool is that, Paul? Because when I see people at the airport at the end of the conference and we're heading home, I see firefighters usually on our flight back to Dallas. They're like, all right, what was your favorite part of the conference?
Yeah.
Favorite class?
All the time.
And we always run out of time. We're on the airplane, and they're like, hey, they just still want to talk about the experience.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, we want to make sure we talk about this every year. This year, Diane for Fire Engineering sent out a message, and I called Bobby. I was surprised. Like, it was, can we get some of the advisory board members to post again about the scholarship opportunity? Oh my God, it's like $5,000 plus dollars. You add everything up, and folks, next year, if they do it, I mean, this is an incredible opportunity to go to the best conference, the greatest show on earth. And they're going to pay for your airfare, your hotel, give you per diem money, pay for your hot training, your full day conference bed. Oh my God. And it's an easy thing to apply. So I'm appealing to you for next year, folks. If you know a deserving firefighter officer, put in for it. It's absolutely incredible. And Paul, let me ask you this: how does it feel when Eddie Buchanan posts a picture of, here I am, which one I'm talking about, here I am, he's in a fire department, and the whole wall in the firehouse, very nicely framed and matted, are different drawings from Paul Coves. I remember you saying, I remember the post, you go, where is that? That is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
surreal.
And you're, like Bobby said, you're a humble guy. We all know that, you're a quiet guy, but it's got to be an incredible feeling to know the impact you're having in the fire service. But before we run out of time, because I have two people that asked about this, they told me to get to it. I've been running my mouth about it since we talked, and we haven't fit it in yet. Let's talk about your work with our armed forces, Paul.
Right.
Bobby and I both have, kids that are veterans, current. Bobby's, and my son just getting out, works for Lockheed Martin now. But I mean, you've done some incredible stuff, both within the States. And how about let's talk overseas?
Right.
The feeling you get when you're able to help out the men and women serving in armed forces.
And I'm part of the National Cartoonist Society, and we've been working with the USO since the 1940s. So anytime there's a conflict, anytime we have soldiers serving abroad, the USO gets with the NCS, and we put a band of cartoonists together, and we go to wherever they want to send us. So when the nation went back to war again in the 2000s, the NCS got back in touch with the USO, and we got that relationship going again. And since then, they send us over at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. And there's a group of us of about 25 to 30 different cartoonists, and they'll send 6 to 10 of us at a time. And we go from everywhere to Iraq, Afghanistan. My last trip was in Djibouti, Africa, and Bahrain. And what we do is that some of these cartoonists are very famous. You see them in your paper every day. Some are illustrators. Some are folks that are just book illustrators. They don't really have that national name, but they have that desire to serve. And the beautiful thing about what we get to do is that we're unlike a lot of entertainers that work with the USO. They'll put on a show, or they'll give a comedian act or something like that, and there'll be a line, you'll get a signed autograph, you'll shake your hand, and you move to the next one. We get that one-on-one time, whether we're at the bases or we're at the hospitals, it doesn't matter. And for that 15 or 20 minutes, and that's the only time I do live caricature, is when I'm on USO tours, is I get that 20 minutes to talk to you about home. And so we become that lifeline home for these folks. And we get to talking about family, sports, life in general, anything to kind of get their mind off about where they're at. And sometimes they want to talk about where they're at. But, we just kind of become that catalyst and that lifeline home for these folks. And it is such an honor to be able to use the gifts that I've been given to give back to these folks. I get the freedom of getting up every morning and going to a local coffee shop or traveling wherever I want. And having that freedom in the States. And it's all because of dedicated people like we have in our armed services. And I know we're always saying, hey, thank you for your service. But they turn around and they're like, well, thank you for being here. Because in a lot of the places we go, they don't get a lot of visitors. Right. Some of these places we have to actually chopper into. So it's just that opportunity to give back. It's 2 weeks out of our life where we either stay in 5-star hotels or we could be in a sleeping bag in a ditch somewhere, and we don't care. We love it. It's just an incredible opportunity, and by far one of the most rewarding things I've ever had a chance to do in my life.
Well, I know I could speak on behalf of, I know one right there. I loved when you did it. My son, FMF Corbin, the Fleet
Your son was a big part in that.
Attached to the Marines, and I know how Bobby feels with him and family and having sons that serve in the military. It's just absolutely incredible. But you know what? As we're getting ready to close things out here, this today, Paul, Bobby and Terry and I, and again, Terry, they must have went long. They're doing a ton of promotional interviews today for officership in Louisville, Texas. But three different things we want to ask you before we go off here a little bit. Bobby's very good. Sarah, our producer, let us run a little bit late, and we talked about that originally. I told you we would, Paul.
Right.
We always do it. It's great. But what advice would you give? You're all over teaching. You're all over not just your artwork, but with the RIT stuff and everything else. The State Academy, Ohio. What advice would you give to our new firefighters? Paul Cove had a chance having a room. Paul Cove had
new firefighters.
New firefighters. Academy.
It's the same. I guess I tell the new firefighters that we get in our department. It's just to listen. Listen to what's being said. Watch what's being done. Learn from that. Practice your skills. Know that just because you're a new person doesn't mean you don't have something valuable to give and something to relate to the fire department. But it's all about just, it's okay to be the new guy. It's okay to come into something and not be the expert on something. Listen, learn, and practice your skills. And then I know we talked a little bit about it for the officers or even chief officers, and I guess the advice would be the same, is to listen. It's just not for the new folks. As an officer, it's just as important for me to listen as it is to speak. Oh, and you know what? You're exactly right. And to know that my subordinates have something valuable to give to this, that I don't come in again. They don't. When I got the trumpet on my collar, they didn't bring me in on a chariot. I came in humble and knowing that I had to earn that rank. So it's a matter of listening and getting to know the people underneath you, and that goes from the frontline officers all the way up to the chief officers. You don't have squires and cherubs circling around you when you walk into the firehouse. It's an honor to be in that position and to be in a position to lead others. And it starts with listening. Like you said, to begin I tell people you're creating your legacy the moment you walk in the door. It's not like later on. You're doing it from day one to firehouse. Second thing, Bobby and I always ask, and Terry, with our special guests, what advice would you give to the new? Let's pick the new company officer. You just said it. Pinning that trumpet on. Thank you for not saying bugle. But what advice would you give to that? You're at the promotional ceremony. You got these brand new lieutenants in front of you. Yeah. What would you say to them, Paul? And I guess it goes right back to that when you asked me about my favorite cartoon. It's that badge and that trumpet mean nothing. It owes you absolutely nothing. But if you give yourself to it and you give yourself to your people, it will give you back everything. And again, I said it before that I'm a living example of that being true, whether it be with my cartoons and my professional work as an artist or as an officer in my department or as an instructor for the state or working with on-scene training associates. It doesn't matter. It's giving myself and what I've learned down the road to the people that I'm actually talking to or the people that I'm over and I'm supervising. Is that, it's all about giving in this, and it's nothing about taking. That if you give enough, it will give back, but you never take. And I guess if I was talking to new officers, that is the first thing that I would want to say to them, is that you got to give yourself to that badge, because that's what it's all about. It's about paying it forward, and it's about showing the way. And we don't do that unless we're willing to listen and we're willing to give everything. I know Bobby and I, we've said it plenty of times before. It's not about us, about those people out there that we said we want to take care of. And then as a boss, as a lieutenant, as a company officer, you just said it so nicely. It's about your people first. It's always about your people first. You became a public servant when you became a firefighter, and when you become an officer for the first time, you become a firefighter servant. And very, very nicely said. Lastly, and I know you get it. You get it from a lot of big bosses. But what advice would you, if you had an opportunity to talk to a bunch of chiefs and say, hey, here's a message for you. I'm a lieutenant, but here's what we need. I've been hearing this from everybody. These are my thoughts. What advice would you give to those bosses out there? I think it's the same thing. And again, and I don't draw much of a line between the lieutenants and the chiefs. And I understand that when you as you go up in rank, that weight becomes even more. And I can't imagine what the weight of a chief. I mean, I've never been in that role, so I don't understand what that is. I can empathize, but I can't, I can't know what that feels like. But to understand that, again, it's about the people underneath you. That when you get that gold badge and you walk in, you've got the 5 trumpets. It's not about you. Again, you don't have the cherubs and the small little angels circling around your head. You don't come in on wings. You're just a man. You're just a woman. You've walked into that place. You've taken on a responsibility and a weight. And to understand that your subordinates need to respect that, but you also need to respect back that these are people, these are human beings, they're underneath you. You are responsible for giving them orders, but you are also responsible for their mental well-being, their physical well-being, their family well-being to a lot of extent, because what you do at that firehouse affects what they do at home as well. And you've got to be the type of person to understand that you've got to treat them like human beings. And to understand that you've got to be able to listen to. And if you've trained your people well, they will do what you need them to do. But you've got to be willing to listen, and you've got to be able to give yourself, again, you got to give yourself to that badge to make everything work. There's nothing special about you because you've become a chief. You've just taken on that responsibility. And I can only imagine what that responsibility and the weight is. All right. But the fact of the matter is, it's still about the people underneath you. And as a lieutenant, I'm in charge of 5 people. As a chief, you're in charge of an entire department. But it's still about the people. And you've got to listen to them, and you've got to care about them, truly care about them to make things work.
Awesome point. Awesome point. But incredibly well said, buddy. Bobby, from you, and maybe Jason, how about closing thoughts from your end of the world there?
Jason?
Well, my closing thoughts would be simply thank you for letting me be a part of the show. I appreciate that. And congratulations to Paul and his award. And
thanks, buddy.
I just wanted to also let it be known that a lot of the times when I'm on Twitter and Facebook and the things that I read in the magazines about the cancer and the mental health aspects of the job, I really push those issues hard to make sure people know that, hey, the cancer is a real thing. If you need to do everything in your power to avoid it as much as possible by doing the things that you need to do, like cleaning your gear and things of that nature. And that if you're having mental problems, whether it's depression or PTSD or things of that nature, don't hesitate to get help. You have to. Your life depends on it. Your family needs you. And the only way to really treat the symptoms is to get help. And if anybody goes around that's supposed to be a fellow brother or sister firefighter that tells you, oh, you just need to sweep it under the rug and toughen up and just get over it, clearly they're not a true brother or sister. If you need the help, get the help. Do not hesitate.
That is awesome. Jason, I can't thank you enough for joining us today with Bobby, and you defined for me courage. Your passion is absolutely incredible. I'm known for, I've asked Paul to do me a drawing. We haven't talked about the details, but in class I'm often the one that says people who lack passion suck. You can't be great at anything that you don't love to do, and you love the fire service. You'll always be one of us, and I can't thank you enough for coming on today with Bobby. It was awesome to have you, buddy.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it.
I just came back because he owes me $5.
I'd rather owe him than screw him out of it.
Well, Bobby, we got the greatest show on the face of the earth. I've said that I've said it for longer than since 1996. I started working for you, but with FDIC. But we're talking days. We're talking days when everybody's going to be hitting the. Besides, you already have instructors and that get ready to show up this weekend. I know that routine, but it's an incredible time of the year.
Yeah, logistics is up and running, and we're heading over there next. I've got some meetings to get to, and then we got some other operational stuff to cover and all kinds of business to do. So that's why I'm here. I'm always pleading, please sign up for the Courage and Valor Fund Run. Please, please,
Yes.
please, please, please. I'm a desperate man. We're trying to break the record. So if you could send it out, please follow my good friend, Jason Wheatley at Hoosier, which is HOSSIER, HOOSIER, Hoosier Fire Buff. Jason Wheatley at Hoosier Fire Buff. Please follow him. He's a great guy. He's a really smart character, very insightful, a lot like Paul. He's one of those people who always sees the kind of the neat things in life and celebrates them. And
But be fair warned, my Twitter account can get a little, rude, crude, and so forth. So follow with caution.
I'll leave that right there.
Well, and folks, if you need to get a hold of Bobby, I always tell people the easiest thing is turn to the front of that magazine.
Or call me 201-406-8278. 201-406-8278. Call me if you got any problems, questions, concerns, you need anything, or Bobby Halton at penwell.com, or Bobby Halton at Gmail, or Bobby Halton on Twitter.
I was just going to hit the email thing too. Hey, Paul, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you to have you come out and teach a class for them, I know you teach all over. Obviously, I said it. You and I were up just outside Calgary for our good friend Brad together. But what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, buddy?
Best way is through email. And it's just paul@artstudio7.com, and the 7 is spelled out.
Oh, outstanding.
That's the easiest way to get with me. So,
well, Paul, thank you so much. I know we thank Jason for joining Bobby, and Paul, congratulations again, dude. I'm so excited for you, and I can't thank you enough for what you do for everyone.
You didn't get pinned last year?
What? No.
Okay, you come to the meeting. I'm going to pin you personally.
No, I'm just a volunteer instructor. Those are the other guys.
I get to make and I get to break the rules.
Yeah, if anybody can, it's the boss.
Oh.
But
you earned it, buddy.
Paul, thank you so much, dude. You've done so much for me and my family, and we all love you. And it's like Bobby said when it came to this year's recipient at ISFSI, the instructors instructor of the year was like, duh. I mean, that's such an easy decision to award that award to Paul Cope. So
I'm looking forward to earning that.
Buddy, just what you're doing and what you continue to do is making a difference in the fire service and beyond, to our troops with your USO work and EMS folks. It's beyond where we can even describe it here, the impact you're having. Thank you, brother, so much. We all love you.
Thank you, Chief, for having me on.
Take care, guys. See you next week.
Okay, perfect. Got Bobby at FDIC. Folks, we're on Facebook and Twitter. All you got to do is look us up. Our next show for this particular show that we do, I know Bobby jumps on as many as he can, but this is really ours. Terry McGrath, which he just texted, he's really feeling bad. They're still doing interviews. But Terry from Louisville, Bobby, we're the third Wednesday of the month for our Humpday Hangout, the issues and challenges in the fire service. There's some other great shows on Wednesdays as well. And don't forget about our radio shows in the evening, which are phenomenal with a bunch of different folks covering great topics. You won't be disappointed. And if you miss them live, you know what? They're just go to the webpage, fireengineer.com, look it up. You can play them. I know guys that play them when they're in the office, in the day room, when they're doing their dailies. It's a great opportunity to listen to some great folks. In closing, we always say this when Terry's with us. I know Bobby is a big believer, and I can speak for Paul and Jason. I'd like to ask you to keep the men and women in our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. And remember, never forgetting means never forgetting. Be safe. God bless you, and see everybody next week. Greatest show, FDIC.
Love you guys.
Yeah.